Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Sean. Today I am doing another book haul video, so let's get into it. First, at the recommendation of the bookstore owner, because he said no one really reads this author anymore, and it's a shame because she is very talented. But I got two books by Penelope Fitzgerald. One of them is on the top 1000 list, 1000 Books to Read Before You Die by James Mustich. That book is Offshore. So I got that and The Bookshop, which is the book that the bookstore owner recommended, I believe. So I don't know anything about this author at all, like even the genre, and they're very short reads, so that's good. So I'll be giving that a chance fairly soon, I think. So pretty eager to get into that. Next, and I'll kind of go through all of these books together, and there is a reason for that, but one of them is Letters of Flannery O'Connor, The Habit of Being. This is on the top 1000 list. Now, the main reason I actually kind of got this, I mean, besides being a top 1000 book, I've actually started to read one of the other books by Flannery O'Connor that's on the list. I don't know what it is offhand, but it's something like Collected Stories or something like that. And I was liking it fairly well. My impression was she was a pretty good writer, so I'm kind of optimistic about that. I did not actually DNF her other book, like the Collected Stories one or whatever. It was just a library book and I had to return it, but I haven't gotten it since. But my recollection again was she's a pretty good writer, so I'll be giving both this book and the Collected Stories or whatever it was a chance at some point, but this is a top 1000 book. I saw it, so I decided to get it. Next is also on the top 1000 list, The Greek Passion by Nikos Kazantzakis. I don't know, I never know how to pronounce names, but he is the author of the book The Last Temptation of Christ, I guess, which I guess is a book about where Jesus is on the cross and his final thoughts are like about Mary Magdalene, and I guess is a real controversial book at the time. Like a lot of Christians really didn't like that book. So I don't know what this book is about, The Greek Passion. It is on the top 1000 list. I don't think The Last Passion of the Christ or any other book by Kazantzakis is on the top 1000 list, but anyway. So I decided to get this one. Next, also on the top 1000 list, I think there might be like 2 or 3 top 1000 books by this author. Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. Now, I have not actually read anything by Conrad yet, but I guess he's written a lot of stuff, but the bookstore owner says no one really reads Joseph Conrad anymore, and he said it's kind of a shame because he's like a real well-known, well-respected author, but just people don't read him or talk about him today. So anyway, Heart of Darkness, top 1000 book, gonna give a try at some point. Last of these little collection of books is The Painted Bird by Jerzy Kosinski. So I had a book by this author. I mean, I picked it up and I was asking the bookstore owner a question about it, and he is like, oh, well, that has to be a top 1000 book or a top 1000 author. So I looked it up because I have like the list on my cell phone, and I didn't see any books by Kosinski on the top 1000 list. And so the bookstore owner is like, oh, well, your top 1000 list is crap then. And I was like, why? And he's like, well, because Kosinski and The Painted Bird isn't on it. So I was like, well, I have to give it a try then, I guess. So I looked and I found this book on the shelves, The Painted Bird. And he, basically the thing about this book, he says, is this is a book about the Holocaust, but I think it never mentions, he says, Jews or Nazis or something like that, but it's a book about the Holocaust without mentioning either of those. So I thought that was interesting. I actually looked this up, and I guess the story about this book is, I think when it was like, when he published it, he was kind of like telling everyone this is like an autobiographical book about like his escape from Nazi Germany. But just as the book was published, he like came out and said, no, it's actually a work of fiction. So I don't know about all that. But anyway, the bookstore owner said this is like a masterpiece book. So not a top 1000 book. Nothing by this author is on the top 1000 list. But it was highly recommended by the bookstore owner. So giving it a try. The reason I decided to do all of these books together kind of is because when I like took them to the counter to buy them, the bookstore owner said, just go ahead and take them. They haven't sold in like 14, 15 years. So he was just like, well, you could just have those. So I was like prepared to pay him money. And he's just, nah, go ahead and take them. So I did. Okay, so yesterday I went to another town and they had a couple bookstores there. So I went into those and the first one was real nice. I mean, it had like real nice wood floors and it smelled real good because they had like two places in the bookstore where they brewed coffee. So it's like, man, this bookstore just looks visually appealing and smells really good. The bookstore I go to, it's like just full of books and it smells like musky old books. So it's just really interesting going to the other bookstore. So anyway, I had to get some book from each store. So the one I got from the first one, the one that smelled and looked real good, is Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee by D. Brown. So something cool about this book is it is actually off the top 1000 list. Of course, I've heard of that title forever. Burying My Heart at Wounded Knee, real prominent title. But anyway, something cool about this book is I actually looked in the index and it mentions several times Little Crow. And Little Crow was my direct ancestor. So basically I am like I'll just try to go with this. It's my mom's dad's mom's grandpa, I think, is the way it works out, but he's a direct ancestor of mine, Little Crow. And also what's cool about him is basically he led a war against the United States, which you can just read about all on Wikipedia. So just type in Little Crow or Little Crow's War. So my fourth great grandpa. If you do that, check out how he died. Little Crow and Little Crow's War. Go check it out on Wikipedia. Really interesting. But anyway, it's cool knowing that Little Crow has several mentions in Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. So just such a classic book I've always known about. And then to find out my direct ancestor is mentioned several times in this book. Just kind of cool. So the other bookstore, well, the first one that looked and smelled real good, they had a mix of like newer and older books. The other bookstore was a lot smaller, but they have a lot more newer books. I don't know if they have like any used books. It's just like all new books. And they also have stuff like soaps and all kinds of little knick-knack stuffs. But it is mainly a bookstore. But anyway, so I went into that store and I was real iffy about what to get. I mean, there were like 2 or 3 or 4 books that I was kind of leaning toward. The first one I got is Isaac Asimov Foundation. So Asimov is on the top 1000 list for like, I want to say 3 books out of the series, and I'm not sure exactly which ones. But anyway, Isaac Asimov, I know, is a real prominent science fiction author, and this is like one of his main series, Foundation. Now, I was real iffy about which book to actually read because I think he wrote 2 prequels after writing this book. So I didn't know, like, should I start out on prequel number 1, read prequel number 2, and then lead up to this book? I do not think either of the prequel books are on the top 1000 list. Or do I start with this book? So kind of what I decided to do, I was actually looking up like Isaac Asimov reading order, like suggested reading orders. And the first thing I kind of saw said that you should read them in the order they were published. So that's what I'm going to do. I don't even know if I'm going to read well into the series because I'm not much of a fan of science fiction. But anyway, since it said that, since this was the first book that was published, it's just the one I'm going to go with first. So I don't know anything about it. I know of Isaac Asimov, but I don't know anything whatsoever about this series. Next, the other book I got from the newer bookstore, I mean like all the new books bookstore, is Babel by R.F. Kuang. So of course I've seen this book all over BookTube, like every single booktuber seemingly has read this book, so I'm really like late to the game. And kind of what I decided is, since like this book had such a craze, everyone reading this book, I'm curious about reading it. I do not read much current fiction because I think a lot of contemporary fiction is just like terrible, and it's just like people getting obsessed over real terrible writing. Looking up at you, Colleen Hoover. And the reason I say is looking up because I have a signed book by her up there somewhere. which I'm really ashamed of. But anyway, I kind of decided I wanted to try this book out, Babel, just because so many people were talking about it. Every single booktuber talking about it. I'm kind of curious to read it and see, is all the craze justified? Is this actually legitimately a good book? Or is it just people being stupid, getting obsessed about something that's not even really any good? So I will see. I kind of have real low expectations. I do not plan or expect to like this, but you never know. I mean, there's been certain newer releases, I guess, that I did think have been pretty good. So I'll be curious to see if I like it, if I think all the craze has been justified, or if it's way overrated and just should not have gotten the attention it's gotten. We'll see. Okay, and finally, what is a book haul video without signed books? So I just have to always get signed books when I see them. So first off, is actually two books. One is signed, one is not. The signed book, which I've had my eye on for a while, is Muriel Spark, The Only Problem. So I don't know anything about this author, I think, but I was looking up on Wikipedia, and I guess, you know, the author is, of course, real prominent, and is on the top 1,000 list for this book, Memento Mori. So I don't know anything about this author, Muriel Spark, but I kind of just decided to get it because this is the only signed book by her at the bookstore, and it's like a real nice looking book. So I was just kind of worried, since it's such a nice looking book, someone will buy it and then I'll forever probably miss out on a Muriel Spark autograph or a signed book. So I kind of decided, I'm just going to take a chance on it. So I got it. So I'm definitely going to read Memento Mori first, the top 1,000 book. Next, I thought this one might be on the top 1,000 list because this is a book, or especially a movie, that was really prominent in like the 1990s. And I think the movie, I forget really, but I thought it had like great critical acclaim, but I remember watching it because like it was getting all these awards, and I was like, this is the most boring movie in existence. But I've always remembered it, and I saw a signed book by the, oh no, it's actually that book. I thought it was just a signed book by the author of that book, but it's actually that book. I don't even know what I buy. I just know it's autographed and I'm like, oh, I need it. Anyway, that book is The English Patient by Michael Odachi. Anyway, winner of the Booker Prize. I do not have such a hatred of books that win the Booker Prize as I do books that win the Pulitzer. I hate books that win a Pulitzer. Every book that's won a Pulitzer, I've hated. Not so much the Booker Prize. I think the Booker Prize generally actually picks some nicer books. But anyway, so The English Patient, signed by Michael Odachi. Real iffy about it because, again, I just remember the movie being like getting a lot of awards, I guess, but just being a major snooze fest. So we'll see how the book is. Next, okay, I actually realized there is like a political science section or something at the bookstore. It's just like a section of the store I never go to. So I was checking it out and I saw this book there. And when I saw it, I was kind of like, ooh, so they do have a signed book by this author. Because originally I saw a signed book by this author in like a glass case at the bookstore. And I was kind of like, I'd kind of like this book, but I don't really want it. And I knew because it was in the glass case, it was probably more expensive. So I was like, I'll pass on that. But after that, I've kind of regretted it. But then I saw this book, a signed book by the same author, on the bookshelf at the political science section, and it is signed. Then I opened it up and it was only 20 bucks. So I was like, ooh, a signed book by this author for only 20 bucks. I guess I'll have to go with it and get it. And that book is, I hate this, but feeling dirty. It Takes a Village and Other Lessons Children Teach Us by Hillary Clinton, signed. So I got it just because it's $20. Honestly, I probably would have gotten it for like $60, maybe $80, I don't know. I really wouldn't want to spend $100 on Hillary Clinton. I don't even like spending $20 on Hillary Clinton. You'd probably have to pay me $20 on Hillary Clinton. I just... but I've kind of regretted not getting it, and so I saw it for 20 bucks, and I was like, well, I'll get it, because I mean, she was a first lady, she was a senator, she was a secretary of state, she was a 2012 presidential candidate and a 2016 presidential candidate. I do not expect she will be a candidate in 2024, but you never know. Democrats could always pull a fast one. I still think it'll be Gavin Newsom and Susan Rice, or one of the two. I really think it'll be Gavin Newsom. But anyway, that's an aside. But anyway, Hillary Clinton signed book, $20. I kind of figure, why not? First Lady, Senator, Secretary of State, presidential candidate, and thanks to her, we got Donald Trump, the best... Oh, I shouldn't say that. Anyway, Hillary Clinton, $20. Not bad. Definitely not a prized possession, but whatever, 20 bucks. Me. Also in the political science section was another signed book by a prominent politician, and that is If You Want Something Done by Nikki Haley. And this again is something I just don't really want, especially Nikki Haley. I do not like her. I will not support her if she gets a nomination, which I don't think she will. And kind of, I was leery about getting it because, I mean, I watched part of the first Republican debate, and part of me was actually thinking, like, at times Nikki Haley actually sounded like remotely coherent and decent. But the thing with her is just, I do not like her foreign policy at all. I basically think she's a neoconservative. She's a war hawk. She's never met a war she didn't like. So if she was to become president, it'd just be like more Ukraine wars, more wars everywhere. I mean, just every single war, she would try to get us into it. That's kind of my view on Nikki Haley. I just do not like her. She's a war hawk. I do not think the Republican Party should have anything to do with that stuff anymore. Let Democrats be the party of war. Anyway, this video is getting way too political. So, signed book by Nikki Haley. Kind of my thinking on it was, well, she was a governor of South Carolina, and she was a UN ambassador, I think. So, even with that, she's still pretty prominent. I do not think she will get the nomination. I do not think she'll be tapped as vice president. But I don't know. I kind of figure, why not? But again, I'm really not enthused about it. If I ever decide to do book unhauls and, like, you know, nothing ever comes with her, she never becomes president or anything, which I do not imagine she will, I may probably unload this book at some point because, again, I just do not like Nikki Haley. No, hard pass. But as you see, I got the Hillary Clinton signed book, so I'm a sucker for signed books, and because of that, I'm kind of able to lay aside my personal preferences. But really not enthused about it. Oh, I forgot. Another thing I don't like about Nikki Haley. So I was watching part of the Republican debate, and during the debate, she said something like, you know, you have all these men on stage here. If you want something done, get a woman. And that's the title of the book, If You Want Something Done. And then the back of it says, like, have a woman do it or whatever. I hate that because that is just so... It's just untrue. It depends on the individual. So what I would like to ask Nikki Haley is... Kamala Harris, or Kamala Harris, or Kamala, whatever her name is, she was appointed the border czar. The border czar. So she is like in charge of the southern border. Well, she is a woman, so what has she done? And of course the answer is it depends on the individual. So it doesn't matter if you're male or female. But what Nikki Haley is doing when she does this stuff, like if you want something done, have a woman do it. That is saying her main qualification is her body parts, not her actual work ethic, not her experience, not her character, nothing. No. She is just saying, elect me because I'm a woman. I have the right parts. And that is just, that gets us into our current mess. So this video is already way too political. But I just hate that. You should not have your main identity be around, like, or your main qualification be just like the color of your skin or your gender. Martin Luther King said people should be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. But so often it seems like everything is decided now based on someone being the right gender or the right skin color. And that is just bad. It's wrong. It's a real bad philosophy, I think. So people should be judged by their own character, by their own experience, by their own what's the word I'm looking for? Competency. Of course, I can't figure out the word competency. So yeah, I just hated that when Nikki Haley did that because, yeah, your main qualification, your main reason people should vote for you should not be because you're the right gender or you're the right skin color. Because if it's done the other way, if people just voted for someone because they're white or because they're male, that would be deemed like sexist or racist or whatever. But when it's done the opposite way, vote for me because I'm a woman, vote for me because I'm black, suddenly that is celebrated, and that is wrong. It is the same damn thing. So voting for someone just because they're white or because they're male or whatever is the same thing as voting for someone just because they're black or because they're female. It's not a way to govern a country. It's not a way to govern our society. People should be judged by their own person, not by just the color of their skin or by their gender or whatever. So I just hated that. So yeah, Nikki Haley, I mean, she could have drawn from her experience, and said, hey, I've been a governor and I have this experience. I've been a UN ambassador. So those things qualify me for the job. Instead, no, I'm a woman. Vote for me. I just hate that. That is stupid. Don't vote for someone like that because that's just bad. I hate that kind of ideology. Vote for someone or hire someone because they are actually the best ones for the job because they actually have the experience, they have the competency, they have the record to run on, they have the knowledge, and they are clearly able to demonstrate that knowledge and skill. Not just, oh, I have the right parts, I have the right skin pigment. That is stupid. Okay, now to make up for those couple books, I saw going into the bookstore, I saw a couple books by Russell Banks just like sitting on the counter. So I looked at them, and basically where they're positioned, they're usually where the bookstore owner will prepare books to like go onto the shelves, like he's finished pricing them. So I saw these books by Russell Banks. There's actually another book on top of it, but I was like, I wonder what this stack is. I've like never checked that stack before, but I was just curious, like just something my spidey sense was like, check these books. So the first book I didn't care about at all, so I just was like, meh, don't care about that. Then I saw like, I don't know which book it was, but it was one of these books, and I was like, ooh, Russell Banks, and I checked the book beneath it, and it was also Russell Banks. So there was no signed sticker on them or anything, but again, my spidey sense must have been like in overdrive. So I opened up the book and I saw it was signed. At this point, I'm kind of a Russell Banks completionist. I read his book last year, I think, The Sweet Hereafter, and it's just a real beautiful book. I love that book. So because of that, I wanted to buy and read every Russell Banks book, and I saw that they were priced for like $6 and $7 or something. So I said to the bookstore owner, hey, do you actually know these are signed? Because priced $6-7, that's just like regular price. So he took a look at them and saw both of them were signed. So he was like, oh, I didn't see that. Good catch. So he just kind of like nudged them back to me, and I was like, do you want to reprice them? And he's like, nah, you found them that way. So he just gave it to me for the market price. So $6 and $7 or whatever. I actually have one of the books. So I actually had a copy of one of the books because, like I say, I intend to read every Russell Banks book. So when I got home, I actually thought I had both of them, but I only had one book. So basically what I'll do is I will read the unsigned book, so that way I like maintain it, I don't damage it or whatever. So read the unsigned book and just keep the signed book as collectible. But anyway, 2 signed books by Russell Banks. So now at least I know I have 4 signed books by Russell Banks. At least 4. So real neat. Next is a signed book by Khalid Hosseini, the author of The Kite Runner, which I had tried to read, or I did read. I don't know how much I read, like 30-40% of it. And I didn't like it. I do not remember what I didn't like about it, but I don't think it was a book I hated, but it's a book that I thought was probably just okay. And The Kite Runner has been such like a critically acclaimed book, I guess. Like I've seen it everywhere. So when I read it, I was kind of like, it's not too good. So anyway, I know he's a real prominent author. The Kite Runner is a real popular book. So I saw a signed book by him and I was just like, well, Khalid Hosseini, I guess I gotta get it. I will probably try to read it. Oh, did I even say the title? And the Mountains Echoed. I'm kind of lucky I actually found it because it didn't have a signed sticker on the spine. It was on the front. So I would have had to take this book out off the shelf and see that it was signed. So kind of a little bit lucky there. But anyway, I'm not too enthused about it. I don't know if I'll read it. I imagine I will at some point, but meh. Okay, next. This is a book that has been on the shelves or behind the shelves forever, and I've been tempted to get it, but I just haven't. And I think it was because I thought it'd be priced too much. But I think it's actually priced $125. I don't know if that's actually like a discounted price, because I think he definitely did knock off a lot on the price for me, because he's had this book for a long while. But it is Margaret Thatcher, The Downing Street Years, signed. So this is my first British Prime Minister. So now I have 5 presidents, I think, 2 vice presidents, 2 failed presidential candidates, at least 2 failed no, 3, well, 3 failed presidential candidates. But anyway, so my first prime minister. So Margaret Thatcher, I mean, I know she's like an icon for conservative leadership, especially in the 80s. Her and Ronald Reagan were kind of it. I am real leery about whether I even remotely like Margaret Thatcher. I do not like the Falklands War. I just don't see a point in that. Why would the UK and whatever be fighting a war for over Argentina, over this island or whatever? I mean, just let them have it. They're closer to it. Let them have it. Also, something with Margaret Thatcher, I think, is she had her cabinet. She didn't like hire a bunch of women to be around her. She actually had like a lot of her rivals, a lot of her political rivals as part of her cabinet. And she didn't like, I guess, foster friendships. I mean, she was a real just mean person. Some people who were interviewed like have said like Margaret Thatcher was the meanest person who like they ever worked for. So basically that was kind of her undoing in the end, is she just was so mean to everyone that in the end they all kind of turned on her and she wound up losing power because of it. But she does get a lot of credit for like staying firm on the Falkland War, I guess, because a lot of people were kind of like, why are we doing this? But Margaret Thatcher was just real insistent, like, we are going to do this and we're going to win. And she just stuck to her guns on that. And for that, she gained I guess, a lot of respect, which she eventually squandered just by being rude to everyone. But anyway, Margaret Thatcher, real prominent conservative leader, my first British Prime Minister, and man, it's a heavy book. So I'll be curious to read it and just see what she says in her own words. But again, part of the thing is I just don't really know much about her. I don't know much about like 1980s British politics. I don't know much about Margaret Thatcher. Basically, I've said everything I know about her, and I may be incorrect on some stuff. So anyway, I'm just glad to get it. A Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher of all people, real prominent leader. So I'm excited to have this. Last of all, and this makes up for everything else, the Hillary Clinton autograph, the Nikki Haley autograph, and I don't know what else, Babel. Okay, so I checked online to see signed books by this author, just because it's an author I really want a signed book by. And I see a lot of signed books by this author priced like $400 and up. The book that I would like is priced like thousands of dollars. So it's not that, it's just a signed book by the author, and it's like one of the cheapest I could find. But anyway, I'm really excited about this. It's an author who is on my top 10 favorite books ever. I think on my second favorite book of all time, but I finally got a signed book by them. It's not the book I wanted, but it's just a signed book by this author, which I'm really excited about. So without further ado, that book is Which Lie Did I Tell by William Goldman, the author of The Princess Bride. I have a signed book by William Goldman. I love it. Now, something about William Goldman is, like, in my mind, to me, William Goldman, if The Princess Bride was the only thing he ever did, that's fine. I mean, it's a classic book. It's an all-time great book. So just for that, his legacy is safe. He is the author of The Princess Bride. That is really cool. But William Goldman actually wrote a lot of stuff. Like, he wrote the screenplay for the film Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid with Paul Newman and Robert Redford. One of my favorite movies of all time. He wrote that. So that's just kind of weird to me, because it's like, I wouldn't have even thought he'd be working back then, but apparently he was, and he wrote that movie. So that's going to be cool. One of my favorite movies ever. He also wrote The Marathon Man. I mean, both the screenplay to it and apparently the book. It was based on a book written by William Goldman. Marathon Man is that movie, real famous line with the dentist guy saying, "Is it safe?" So that's a William Goldman book. Did not know that. Other books or screenplays or whatever William Goldman wrote, he wrote All the President's Men, A Bridge Too Far, Misery, I think the Stephen King movie. He wrote the screenplay for that. And, ow, bit my tongue. Some other stuff. So William Goldman was actually a real prominent author. So I think this is about his life in writing. So an autobiography. I think usually I wouldn't like reading autobiographies, but it's William Goldman and I have a signed copy of it. So really excited to have it. I have a signed book by the author of The Princess Bride. I love it. I wish it was The Princess Bride, but that would cost thousands of dollars, really. So just glad to have a signed book by him. Real excited about that. Love it. Definitely one of my most treasured autographs now. I may have to do a video of my 10 favorite signed books. That would be a real hard list to come up with, because I mean, I have Ray Bradbury, Frank Herbert, Clive Cussler, Game of Thrones, George R. R. Martin. So many things I have that are just really cool, and just trying to pick a top 10. Ooh, that would be so difficult. Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. Oh man, that'd be a difficult video to do. But anyway, so that's it for the book haul. Really excited about some of those signed books, especially William Goldman. I love that. Anyway, what do you think of these books? Have you read any of these books? Have you read Babel? What do you think about it? That will probably be going on to my to-read list fairly soon. If you want to see any of my other videos, I will post them here somewhere. So if you want to give those a look, go ahead. I appreciate it. If you guys can remember, leave this video a like and subscribe if you haven't. That really helps the channel. My subscribers have really been frozen around 150, 155. It would be real nice to get that number up. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. See you next time. Bye.